might well win. If not this time around, in the next election cycle, we'll be gone and they will just be trying on new sneakers. So this here right now, this GD minute is your moment. The fork in the road stands before you with two arrows. Get off your asses, make the right decision. Either the world as you know it ends this November, or their version of your life is postponed for another election cycle.
And now, the Edwin Black Show. Sponsored by the books of Edwin Black, available on Amazon and at booksellers worldwide. And now, here's Edwin.
Hello, this is Edwin Black, investigative journalist, historian, and human rights author of 350 editions in 40 languages in 190 countries worldwide, including IBM and the Holocaust, War Against the Weak, and my latest, Israel Strikes Iran. Ours is a show for opinion makers, decision makers, and leadership, not mass clicks. Subscribe for alerts at theedwinblackshow.com. Please, if you want to support our work, we need your assistance. No question, just visit theedwinblackshow.com/support. Your help, big or small, assures our complete and utter intellectual and uncensored journalistic independence. Our stuff you won't get anywhere else. Go to theedwinblackshow.com/support and keep us independent. Today's episode is made possible and sponsored without any preconditions, requests, or stipulations by members of the Jewish communities of Binghamton, New York, Dallas, Texas, Wheeling, West Virginia, and Mexico City, and co-sponsored by Faye Lincoln's ethics bestseller, Values That Shape the World. The Edwin Black Show, along with our YouTube site, speaks frankly and without tremor to a fragmented world, seeking better understanding of our tormented past, our present, very, very tense, and a turbulent future, still uncertain. By the way, stay tuned for my special word of wisdom at the very end of the show, just before I sign off. So, today, we confront the realities of the upcoming midterm election. It will be an absolute crossroads election. Vote to the left for the Democrats. Our nation will be transported down the fiery road to communism, central control, and a second Holocaust. Or vote to the right for Republicans and their agenda of personal freedoms, prosperity, democracy, and the defeat of ethnic and religious hate. Let's not mince words. The Democratic Party is not what it was in Clinton's day or even in Obama's day. It has been hijacked by the virus of socialism, Jew hatred, communism, and the quest for central control. The Democratic Socialists are now probably the most organized, regimented, and calculating political party in the nation. The movement, once led by aging socialist Bernie Sanders, who doubles as one of the most powerful figures in the Democratic Party, the surging Democratic Socialists have muscled up their recruitment, tactics, and electoral victories through a clever and disciplined takeover of the old guard at the Democratic Party. The Stalinists used to purge the party with sudden disappearances. The Democratic Socialists accomplished their purges with sudden primary challenges in decidedly blue districts that automatically control election to the primary winner. So they sneak up on the establishment Democrats who haven't run a primary in years, and suddenly they are challenged by socialist and communist upstarts who can win when their highly disciplined, newly registered party takeover voters win with just a fraction of the sleepy registered Democrats. For example, in last month's Democratic primary for Colorado's 1st congressional district, Malat Quiros won with only about 28% of the registered Democrats in that district. With that fraction, Quiros unseated 15-term Liberal Democrat Representative Deanna DeJette. Daria Liza Avila Chevalier primaried longtime Representative Adriano Espaillat in New York's 13th congressional district, and by a narrow margin of only approximately 2,000 votes, she won it. It did not matter that this woman's Twitter account showed support for communism, Marxism, ideology, and various figures, including Vladimir Lenin. She won. Zohran Mamdani won his mayor's race in New York when the rational vote was split, and then he eked out 0.78% of a single point to win the three-way race. In his case, 16,505 people registered the day before the primary election cutoff, and that was more than 5 times the previous single-day record. Very organized. One by one, the socialists have mobilized. In 2024, the socialists only had 50,000 dues-paying members. Today, they have more than 100,000 with chapters in all 50 states. While the media has focused on a few dozen startling national primary victories, in fact, some 250 DSA socialists now today hold elective office at the local and state level. The DSA works hand in hand with the Communist Party of America, which 20 years ago virtually ceased to exist, but this year has revitalized with 20,000 new members, plus the Greens and the so-called Working Families Party and others. They all intend to hollow out, consume from within, and take over the Democratic Party. Purging everyone they see is not socialist enough or too wedded to capitalist democracy. The old geezer establishment Democrats are running and limping scared. They're afraid to say boo against these America haters, lest they be targeted. Fat Man Representative Gerald Nadler has already announced he will not run again. Senator Chuck Schumer has been silent. Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries welcomed them to the big tent, a tent big enough for woman abusers with Nazi tattoos on their nipples like Plattner, a tent big enough for running buddies with the blind sheikh who bombed the World Trade Center. But to Jeffries, the DSA has chanted, "You're next." My message, folks, is going to get worse. We have seen this play out before. Just after World War I, Germany had a conservative party named the DAP, the Deutsche Arbeiterpartei. That is the German Workers' Party. In 1919, Adolf Hitler joined and with a group of National Socialists took over the party and renamed it the NSDAP. That is the National Socialist German Workers' Party. They became the Nazis. Their main message was jobs, economic redistribution, and they targeted the Jews as the main evil to be destroyed. In their governmental and fundraising actions, yes, Hitler and his cronies could wear three-piece suits and top hats, but the Nazi Party had its violent stormtroopers, the brown shirts, to deploy street violence and mob-style pressure against all they opposed. The new Democratic Party that we see today also has its Nazi-style violent street thugs. Call them Antifa, Trans-Tifa, the Qatar-financed Arab Street, or just the youthful idiots caught up in the moment of the movement. Jew hatred and Israel hatred seem to be the litmus test for the Democratic Party now, and the headline using the term litmus test is blasted everywhere. I give you just 2 names. Among the most progressive, left-leaning, anti-Trump, pro-impeachment Democrats, I give you Congressman Representative Dan Goldman, who was banned from Poetica Coffee in Brooklyn because of his support for Israel. Or congressional candidate, California State Senator Scott Wiener, a prominent gay Democrat at the absolute forefront of transgender rights legislation. He was just surrounded and nose-to-nose harassed by Antifa protesters for supporting Israel. It was the worst screaming, demeaning, and humiliating harassment of a person I've seen in recent times.
You've been terrible on Gaza. He hates you. You do not belong here anymore, Scott.
Liberal New Jersey Democrat Representative Josh Gottheimer published on his official House webpage a cry for help entitled, quote, "I'm a Democrat. My party has a double standard on anti-Semitism, close quote. Longtime left-wing Washington State Representative Adam Smith, ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee, openly told the media, quote, there has been a concentrated campaign that can only be described as threats, intimidation, and harassment, not just against me, against my family, against my staff, against my neighbors, close quote. Smith went on to verbalize what everyone is saying, that this dedicated group in the democratic socialist movement doesn't believe, quote, fundamentally in the American democratic experiment. He went on to say, quote, they think white Western culture is oppressive, racist, bigoted, terrible, and that America represents that and must be smashed, Adam Smith said, close quote. Ladies and gentlemen, we are facing a Nazi-style attempted takeover of the USA, dressed up as a fake free stuff for everyone movement. And now, Adam Smith, just moments ago, has released a statement confirming why he voted against military aid to Israel along with 100 other Democrats. And he says it clearly here. He was threatened, he was abused, his family was threatened, and he says that we cannot engage in proper legislation. I'm deeply concerned about the tactics used by those on the far left to advocate for cutting off aid to Israel. To date, my family and I have had our house vandalized. A fire has been set in my driveway. My neighbors' lives have been disrupted by demonstrations in the middle of the night. Town halls meant to be forums for dialogue have been shut down, and a staff member has been physically assaulted. And this is why he took the vote. The Democrats, now the left, Nazis, same tactics. Democratic Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman calls the socialists dirtbags that must be blocked. That's a quote. He has openly now, finally, threatened to jump ship to the Republicans if the party does not correct course. Even James Carville, and he's nuts, says the Democratic Party must run from the socialists because they want to burn everything down. This is the so-called war within the Democratic Party that everyone is talking about. But the socialists are confident because they don't care what you discover in their Twitter account from 3 years ago. They don't care how anti-Semitic their tone is. They don't care how anti-American their platform is. They know they can mobilize the disaffected, the uninformed, the disenchanted, and the bamboozled to win local election after local election until they can paralyze the nation from within. The Nazis had Goebbels, and he manipulated everyone's mind in Germany after he put a small box in every household. This box was called the Volksempfänger, the people's receiver. What was it? It was a radio, a simple radio. But before he was done, 8 million such radios had been manufactured and placed in German households to feed German minds day and night. Goebbels had the radio. Today we have the mobile phone, which hypnotizes an entire generation, and we have email campaigns day and night. I personally get hundreds of emails every day, and about 80% of them are from Democratic operatives trying to scare me into this or that. Understand, while the socialists in the Democratic Party corpse they have infested claim to be trying to save democracy, they don't believe in democracy. They're communists and hope for one committee of politicos to control everything that happens in the nation, in your company, and in your personal lives. They do not deny this. They advertise it. They want to abolish, do away with our constitutional protections and checks and balances and run our country by committee, their committee. How? Remember, this is from their open and public platform statements. First, abolish the Senate, because then they can establish an intimidation and pressure base within the House of Representatives, where extremely small populations can send a person to Congress. The Electoral College, which balances small states with big states, would also disappear. With no Senate for statewide representation and no Electoral College, the smaller states, and especially the towns and rural areas, will have no check or balance. They also promised to abolish the presidency and subjugate the Supreme Court. Both the High Court and the Chief Executive would become instruments to command under the House, which would be controlled by socialist politics, pressure, or sheer violence. I believe the name they have for the executive they would command is Chief Honcho. That's a quote. Citizens and non-citizens would be equally entitled to vote. That means that you could just pour 20 million people in and tomorrow morning they vote. Prisons would be abolished. Anyone could run for president, American born or not, and the Department of War would be defunded. The committee controls you and all economy and all money matters. Here's a quote from the DSA, Democratic Socialists of America website. I'm quoting, folks. You work as much as you are able and no more than needed, and you would control your own labor and see it going to good use. It's not just a job to pay the bills. Speaking of bills, you don't really have them anymore. Close quote. That's a quote, no ellipses. Israel would become an enemy instantly to destroy in favor of a Palestinian takeover, October 7th style. A DSA takeover displacing Republicans would mean terminating relationships with Israel, recognizing a Palestinian state, forbidding flights to Tel Aviv, blocking all business, and perhaps organizing a joint international force with Islamized Europe in partnership with Turkey and Iran to invade, dismantle, and destroy the Israel Jewish state. Remember, socialist New York Mayor Mamdani is a Shiite Twelver, like the mullahs running Iran. The Twelvers want to see global apocalypse to ensure the coming of paradise through the emergence of the hidden imam. But, spoiler, you stupid people, Israel will never be destroyed. We have falafel stands in Dimona, and some of those falafels are seaborne and airborne. The Jewish people are done with absorbing mass annihilation. What part of never again do the enemies of the Jewish and Israel people not understand? We mean it. In addition, should the communists overtake the government, we will surely see the rejecting states separate from the corrupted states, and a real civil war will break out. It will be internationalized, with Canada, Mexico, and Europe getting involved as they have in prior wars. In the process, the socialists will organize local committees to go door to door. They're already doing this in Europe. They will call them canvassing committees, but others call them Jew hunts. That's the name they're using in Ireland. They will seek out Jews and Christians who support Israel, Trump, and capitalism, and suddenly, those concentration camps the Texas Democrat was threatening will become debated again. Shall we call them sterilization camps, as Democrat Galinda did, or shall we just call them camps for, quote, formal deprogramming, as Hillary Clinton expressed it in 2023? Maybe we'll be back to where Chaim Weizmann said it best in 1936, when he warned the world was, quote, divided into places where Jews are not allowed to live and places that Jews are not allowed to enter, close quote. Yes, I'll be gone, and some historian to follow me, many I hope with the balls that I have, maybe not, will write that the true onset of the Second Holocaust began in November 2026, the way we talk about the rise of the Hitler regime after the election of November 1932. Oh yes, socialists can gain enough seats and power to organize a constitutional convention. It takes votes, ballot votes, by 34 states. And then the changes, no matter how radical, must be ratified for legislatures or conventions in 38 states to become valid. For years, Democrats have been claiming Republicans want to do this. They're on the verge of doing it. They're doing it next Thursday. But now it is them. They are planning this right now. The Walking Dead Democrats want to insidiously destroy this country from the inside out, and they are not hiding it. It's online. That is the choice we are faced with. So what can we do? At this point, we're at the dusty, crusty crossroads. It's too late to sway the disenchanted and uneducated to convince them of anything. They grew up thinking you get a pizza by pushing a button on a phone. They figure they can try anything. They don't care about stories of Stalin, Castro, and the Stasi. History does not interest them. History is not in their phone. They only care about TikTok and the pretty button that surges endorphins through to their brain. That's the generation you created. That's the generation we created. Hey, they might well win. If not this time around, in the next election cycle, we'll be gone and they will just be trying on new sneakers. So this here right now, this GD minute is your moment. The fork in the road stands before you with two arrows. Get off your asses, make the right decision. Either the world as you know it ends this November, or their version of your life is postponed for another election cycle. Vote right and make sure everyone you know does the same, and as soon as possible. Vote like your life and mine depends upon it. I yield now to crisis manager in the thick of turmoil, Juda Engelmayer from his twin purges in New York and New Jersey. Okay, Juda, tell us, which way are we going to go?
Well, I still have hope for this country, so I'm thinking that we're going to go in the right direction after a period of time of this bad correction period. It's going in a bad place right now. Right now, it seems like the empire is falling apart. The people who believe in socialism, what used to be the liberals, the Democrats, they are starting to get frustrated over, I guess, Trump derangement syndrome, the economy, and a handful of other things, watching rich people get wealthier, watching poor people get poorer, seeing more homeless people around. It gets that without understanding the facts behind it, younger generations just see capitalism as a problem. And they've been buying into the arguments made by these progressives. Obviously, it was been inserted by Qataris and by Soviets, I believe, post-Cold War to try to undermine our Western civilization as we know it. The problem is that it's going to take a generation. It took a generation and a half for it to get this bad. It'll take at least a generation to repair, but it's not going to get repaired until and unless some leaders in our country can really speak up and speak to the population the way the left does. When you see a guy like Mamdani in New York who appeals to so many people because he smiles, he's well-spoken, and what he says sounds reasonable if you don't really dig deeper. We have very few people on the right, on the Republican conservative side, who could address people that way, who could appeal to people that way. We seem to be very much old school, old style, older white people or MAGA-looking young people, but not people who look like everybody else, who look like Composite of America, who can appeal to people on the conservative side. It's a bizarre thing. I don't know why we don't have it. I don't know why it can't be, we can't build that. But I have hope, and I think that ultimately most Americans, I mean 51%, don't want socialism and don't want to see the United States collapse and turn into a European city, European country, or even worse, or even Islamic country under Sharia law, or Soviet Union under lockdown. I don't think they want that. I think that people have to wake up, and once they do wake up, we will start having a recovery. But it's going to take a long time. It's going to take a long time, and it's going to be painful. And it's going to be painful for Jewish people because we are have always been the canary in the coal mine, and the canaries are falling down, and the coal mine is going to hit everybody soon. But we're the canary, and it's getting worse. You got Khanna 2-3 years ago, the Israel supporter. Now he goes there and makes fake videos about how he was oppressed by IDF and Israeli police. And this is what he thinks wins. He's a phony, but people are going to buy it. And I think that we have a serious problem in this country for now, but ultimately I believe we will prevail, but it's going to be painful and long.
Juda, that was disturbing. I want to follow up on some of what you said.
Sure.
First of all, You say that people don't want socialism. I'll agree with you. They don't want communism. I'll agree with you. They don't want people going door to door on Union Turnpike and asking what their involvement with Israel is. They don't want to be checked on who they voted for. But do they have an understanding that the people running in the Democratic Party are actually the socialists who will immediately, once they get power, put them under control and lack of freedom? And second of all, when you say ultimately, what does that mean for November? Those are my two questions.
Okay. Ultimately, I think years down the line, I suspect Republicans hold on to the Senate but lose the House. That's what I think. And I think they'll lose the House by large numbers. That's where it looks right now. Things could change over the next couple of months. You know, people don't really focus on their voting until September, October. We'll see. What was your first question? I just slipped my mind. I'm sorry.
Well, you say that these people don't want...
Yes.
But do they grasp?
No, they don't. I'll tell you why they don't grasp it. Because Queers for Palestine is still a thing. Because a gay cruise still tries to park in Egypt and still tries to park in Turkey, and they have no idea why. You know, when they go home and walk on the street saying we hate Israel and we're Queers for Palestine, but they get on a ship and try to dock in Egypt and Istanbul, they are surprised that they're not one of them. And they don't equate the two. For some reason, it doesn't compute, and I can't figure that out. It's not logic. It's not logic to understand that these people are going to shut them down and squeeze them once they become elected. They don't get it. They think they're their friends. They think they're going to do them favors. And they think all the ideas they have right now are great. Shut down the Senate. Shut down the presidency. Let's all control it by some socialist committee. That sounds like a great idea because the people who are running it have done such a sucky job. Maybe these 5 people, the squad and all that, can do it much better because I love them so much. No, they're dreaming and they don't get it. And 2,000 gay men don't get it. They stood on a freaking boat and I was watching videos of them protesting, complaining, being upset. But all they're saying, they don't want our money. They're going to go home tomorrow and protest on their streets with their Queers for Palestine flags. They don't understand it. They don't understand it.
So then what does that say for November? If they don't...
I told you it says for November. We're going to have some painful elections where we might...
So we're going to lose the House. What else?
I think we lose the House, yeah.
And we're going to lose the House by big or a little?
I think we're going to lose the House by big.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. We want the truth. Few have a more informed, analytic, and incisive view than our next guest, ladies and gentlemen. I give you Yossie Hollander in California. We're at the Crossroads. Yossie, what now? Seize the mic and tell us what you know.
Historically, midterm election is always an anger election, while the regular presidential election is about your future of 4 years. The second one, the Republicans are today now fat and happy, and the Democrats are angry. So as a result, of course, they have a higher turnout. So I think it is clear that if you are a Republican, you really need to turn out. If you're not going to turn out, this is not a time to be fat and happy. You got to be worried. Okay? And especially if you're a Jewish Democrat, you need to be wary. And I think there's enough of them that, as my daughter said, have taken the red pill right now. Now, but a real issue I think that most people completely ignore is the foreign interference in our election. We always had foreign interference in our election. I think today with the new technology, it's larger than ever. It's not just on the left, it's also on the right. So, for example, historically, if you look at the right, every time we had an isolationist movement in the United States, it was actually supported and created by our enemies. For example, before World War II, the Germans were the ones supporting the isolationist movement to prevent the United States from entering the war. When we went to the Ukraine, when there was a war in the Ukraine, the Russians activated an isolation movement in the United States that reached all the way to the vice president, okay? I'm not suggesting he's a Russian agent. I'm suggesting the influence campaign around isolationism is all now a Russian and Chinese operation. And right now, when we had anti-war against Iran, it's an information war of the Iranians. It is not anywhere coming from inside America. So in the same way, the Qataris are involved, like in the Mandani case, the Qataris were heavily involved. And in many other Muslims candidates or pro-Islamist candidates, the Qataris are heavily involved. The Chinese are funding all the kinds of extreme groups that go on demonstrations and interfere with what we're doing. And the amount of social media interference into the opinion of Americans is huge. And unfortunately, the government is totally out of this game. Just to give you a number, the Chinese have a special organ of the government, like we have a Navy, we have an Air Force, etc. They have another organ, okay, which is called for cognitive soft war. Their annual budget is $50 billion. And it's all targeted against the US, and the Jews are only a proxy of that fight. And so therefore, I'm very, very worried because today's opinions of people are shaped a lot online, and the United States is like 20, 15 years behind, and all our enemies are basically trying to destroy us from within. So if you ask me right now what will happen in the election, I agree with Juda, but I have a little bit more optimism because of gerrymandering that we can survive that. But overall, I think one important thing for winning the election is for Trump to come strong and encourage the Christian evangelists to show up. Because right now, because JD has the speaker on Israel, a lot of Christian evangelists might stay at home. So I think Trump, if he wants to win, he needs to push him aside.
Thank you, Yossi. Another worrying comment. I think JD is a real problem for the United States and for the Jewish community. And we really can't wait for Rubio to win the presidency in the next cycle. Just his stupid remarks on the Joe Rogan show that Israel was having a cabal against him. And you might remember that I spoke in Jerusalem and I said my opening remarks were, JD, Israel's a democracy. Don't tell us what to think and don't tell us what to say.
And that causes me to tell J.D. Vance that this is here a democracy. Don't tell us what to think or to say.
So do you think that gerrymandering will shore up the problem and we will not lose the House? Because I tend to think that that's a possibility.
I don't know, okay? Those are numbers games. We don't know, okay? It might not. There's another interesting issue, which I don't know how it will develop over the next few months, but tonight there is a big statement coming from Trump on election fraud. And I think there'll be a lot of actions. I don't know how that all will end up towards election, whether this is not too late, etc. But I think election fraud is going to be front and center, including litigations, stopping all kinds of issues like mail-in fraud, etc., which may succeed or may not succeed. We'll see. But I think that will be a very, very hot issue over the next 4 months.
All right. Thank you, Yossi. Let's get to our questions. We have a bunch of them. The first is from Indiana. Candidates such as Fetterman and Richie Torres have deeply liberal values and platforms, yet are unafraid to support Israel. Why are there not more such candidates? Judah.
Why aren't there more candidates like John Fetterman? There should be. I think it was a fluke that he won. Don't forget, John Fetterman came to office as opposition to Mehmet Oz, and it was an anti-Trump vote. It wasn't a pro. We didn't know that he was going to be who he was. It turns out, I wish more people would turn out to be like him. You know, people didn't elect him because they thought he was going to be John Fetterman. They elected him because they thought he was going to be the anti-Trump, if you recall that. So why aren't there any more? Because they can't rise in their own party because of the voting population. So anyone who's like that, who sounds like John Fetterman, will be associated with center-right, conservative Republican politics and no longer progressive Democratic politics. So they won't get supporters. They have to run on private, separate lines or somehow, change parties. It's difficult for a Democrat who holds old-fashioned democratic values to actually win in blue cities, in blue states.
Go ahead, Yossi.
Also, people have to understand how the funding structure works in the Democratic Party these days. It's all coming from a few billionaires, hardcore leftists. And there's just no money whatsoever for you if you're not kowtow to what they want, like the Soros and a few others. like that. They just totally control the system today. There is no money in the Democratic Party. They have a system in which they give money directly from the billionaires to the people. The Democratic Party as a party is actually dead.
And a follow-up question from Indiana. What about Richie Torres, who won handily in his district, and he's actually quite different than Fetterman? What do you say about that, Yossi?
Look, there's always going to be, the question is those who will win. It's not the minority we need to look. We need to understand what is structurally changing within the Democratic Party. And what's structurally changing is politician wants to get elected and the money flow for the Democratic candidates today is totally controlled by radicals who are anti-American.
So how can Israel and the Jewish community exist and succeed in this country without bipartisan support?
So I don't know if we will survive, first of all, with bipartisan support. I think the more interesting issue, historically what happened was that whenever the Democratic Party was taken over by radical leftists, they lost the election big time, presidential elections. And then there was a correction after that, like Clinton was a correction, etc. So there was always a correction. I'm not sure this time that cycle will prevail. But I think 28 will be a really interesting guidance to where this country is going. If we're going to have a radical Democratic president in 28, I think most of us needs to pack.
That's right.
Or go to southern states, which will eventually separate from the United States.
Well, first, though, go to South Carolina, Texas, in Florida on Thursday, but by Friday they'll be in Israel. I have a question here from Jimmy in Los Angeles. He says, what happened with Khanna? Was he detained by men with guns? So I'm going to answer this first, and then you guys can. This is such a fake out, ladies and gentlemen. Khanna was given the opportunity to coordinate his visit to the West Bank, which is the fake name for Judea and Samaria. And he was trying to get in with J Street, which is anti-Israel. He was trying to get in to a closed military zone, and he was blocked from going. He wasn't detained. He was blocked. And he said that some of the people around his car had guns. Oh, my God. Has this guy ever been to a 7-Eleven in Israel? Has this guy ever been to a McDonald's? Everybody is walking around with an M16. So it was just a fake out. I'm glad that Ambassador Leitner, who I'm seeing on Wednesday, the Israeli ambassador, called him out for it. It was just a fake. We've all been there. No one's really buying it. But it's another example of the fake that is rampant through the adversaries of Israel. Judah, what do you say?
Well, I already said that what Khanna did was fake, and he did it for votes, for support. He changed his stance completely, came out like Israel's the enemy because he thinks it's going to appeal to him and help him with his presidential run. But I have a criticism of Israel on this too, because the military should be training their officers when you have something like that, and he's a congressman, and that they're filming. I know that it's hard to do, and you have to be professional military and do everything you have to do, but they could make accommodations and not feed into it so as much as they do. And I don't think the Israelis help themselves sometimes because there's no coordination at the top. And when they go ahead and do that and block, know that he's filming it, and they know he's a congressman and all that stuff, they allow the scene to play out exactly like it's going to show. And I think they could do a much better job of adjusting their modus operandi when something like that happens and try to mitigate it a little bit. And I know Yossi might disagree with me on that, but I think that Israel has a difficult PR problem is that they don't organize properly when things like this happen, and they don't know how to get out of their own way.
All right, before Yossi chimes in here on this fake incident with Khanna, when I did my book, Financing the Flames, I went right into the belly of the beast. And I can tell you, after years and years, there isn't any member of the Israeli military or the police or the settlers who do not believe that any encounter is not going to be filmed. Everything is filmed. It's put online. It's like invisible to them. And no one knew what this guy's route was. He did not coordinate it. He was out there in the hills, and they didn't hurt him. All they said is, you can't go beyond this point. It's a closed military road. When's the last time you went down a road and the guy said, sorry, it's a closed military road? Let's hear from Yossi.
I think the more interesting aspect is who brought him there. One is breaking the silence, the head of it, an anti-Israeli organization that it should be shut down and all its people should be in jail. And the second is a Palestinian who is known to violate the law and taking people deliberately to those military zones to create provocation. And in both cases, they're all protected by the Israeli Supreme Court, which is the big problem behind all of that, okay? Because these people should not be protected. They are trying, it's not a democracy issue here, they're trying to take the state out.
Oh, yes. I mean, we know that what they do is they plant their fig trees on somebody else's property. And then when people remove those fig trees, they say, oh my God, they're killing my fig trees. I wrote an entire book about that. Here's the watch party in the villages. If the socialists win, will they try to take the Israel flags out of our synagogues? So here's the answer. They will in New York, but they'll never get to it in Florida. So you will not have that problem in Florida. But yes, I can imagine Mamdani is even now thinking how Israel might be declared an enemy state, an enemy of the international city, New York, and that anyone who put the flag there would come under special scrutiny. They might go Chicago style and send out the plumbing inspectors or anything of that nature. Let's ask Juda, because Juda works with the synagogues.
I think that before something like that happens, I think Mamdani has a few other things he wants to do first. I think going to a non-for-profit or religious institution and telling them what they can and can't do inside might be problematic, or else, because then another administration could win and go into Islamic centers and start doing the same thing. I don't think he's going to do that right away. It might eventually happen, but I think that synagogues and religious institutions will be safe for the time being. It just won't be any place else. You won't see anywhere else. And he might say that if you're getting city funding or state funding, then you cannot have the flag. If you're just a synagogue that operates without funding from the city or state, then you can do what you want to do. I think that's a further way off. But yes, it is something that he does want to eliminate, the support for Israel everywhere. And I think that will happen eventually.
So are you saying that Bagels & Co. at Union Turnpike and 188th, which has the Israeli flag on top of the door, he would mandate that they don't have a right to keep that there or do something?
I don't think he can do that to a private business either, unless they're receiving some sort of public funding.
Okay. From Newton, Mass., if the socialists take over, will this involve a civil war state by state? The answer is it will not be a civil war state by state. It'll be a civil war, and it could be a shooting war. It could be area by area, because you're going to be talking about parts of New York and parts of New Jersey and parts of Tennessee and parts of California and Idaho and Washington State that don't want to live under a socialist rule. And obviously, if they get to remake the country in one or two election cycles and they get to pass a constitutional convention to change our system of government, there's going to be a third of the states are going to say, no way, Jose. So I think it'll be along the lines of what I described a couple of years ago. It'll be splotchy, it'll be here and not there, and it won't be fun. Yossie, what do you say about that?
I actually think we will have a civil war if that happens. And I also want to remind people that 95, if not more, % of the actual soldiers in the army are not socialist.
That's right. Other than Latner, I think most of them are good red-blooded Americans. Judah, what do you think is it going to be? What type of civil war are you talking about?
You know, I prepare for the worst, hope for the best. You have a lot of communities, Jewish communities, but as well as other communities now, obtaining weapons and getting gun permits and licenses. You see that more and more. New Jersey has throughout Jewish communities, the gun ownership has gone up. Listen, I think that it's very possible it could be a violent civil war between the socialists and the people who want to keep America the way America is supposed to be, democratic and open. I don't see another way. A civil war of words? No. I think if it gets to that, it'll be violence. And I think there will be blood on the streets and the red states and even the red cities up in blue states. The red cities and blue states are going to uprise. You think, 48 counties of New York State are going to sit back while 12 counties are going to make them a socialist state? No. And they all have guns up there too. I think it could be violent. I think that if this actually plays out the way you're saying, where the socialists win more, get a constitutional convention and try to change our system of government, our presidency, our Congress, our Senate, yeah, I think it'll be a violent civil war.
But that is exactly what they're advertising on the DSA website, that they want to get rid of the Senate. They want to subordinate the Supreme Court and get rid of the presidency itself. Is that not correct?
Yeah, that's what they're advertising for. But, it's a long way off before that happens. I'm saying it's a long way off. Who the hell knows? But what I'm saying is they can say whatever they want. They can put whatever they want on their website. When it actually happens, that's when this. Right now, it's a lot of talk. Hopefully people get scared and will vote these people out. But if not, I think that if they do start imposing their will, there will be a civil war. And frankly, I agree with Yossie on the people who sign up, who enlist. But I also think that even the non-enlisted, the people who tend to fight harder, better, and know more are not the liberal progressives.
Okay, the Watch Party in Chicago has our last question, and she wants to know in a brief comment, so who will win this fight, America as we know it or the socialists? Juda.
America ultimately as we know it, because if it doesn't, then we're no different than Europe, no different than France and London. Real Americans don't want that for America. Nobody wants, so I think that if it doesn't win, we won't have a United States of America anymore. It'll be a split country. And, you might have split governments and things like that. I don't see, if America doesn't win, it's not going to be 50 states. It'll be a portion of the 50 states one way and a portion of 50 states the other way.
Yossi.
I agree 100% with you on that, but I will add one more. I think we should fight it, etc., but let's not overreact also in one way, okay? We have to understand the external forces operating and respond to it, like establishing a government entity with $100 billion budget to fight the soft war. But also, a lot of the surveys and all of the whatever, it's all fake, a lot of it, okay? So when you have a survey among Jews that says that Mamdani is more popular than Bibi, then I ask who made the survey, okay? Mamdani probably. So, those are not the real numbers. We have to really understand. 17% of the people in New York voted, okay, in the Democratic Party, of the Democrats, okay? So it's really not the majority of the people. The fact that they can have early win and people have not woken up, that's understandable, but I think people will wake up and will start mobilizing against them. I think the critical issue is we have to take down people that fund it, and people that fund it like Qatar, or people that fund it like Soros. Those are the critical people.
Well, they just took down a guy. They arrested him in Ibiza in Spain. He was the heir to the Cox Broadcasting fortune, and he was one of these financing the Hamas rallies and the anti-American stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, we're out of time. I want you to hold for my closing word of wisdom just 2 minutes away. But first, I want to thank my international team, including Holly in Nashville, Lance in Michigan, Carol in Maryland, and many others in numerous additional cities around the world. I'll see everyone back here in 2 weeks at 3 p.m. Eastern. You want to be a friend? The Edwin Black Show. Go to theedwinblackshow.com/support. Keep me independent. You want to hear me in person? Consult my events page at edwinblack.com. Until then, head over to any Barnes & Noble in the USA or any Amazon, Walmart, Apple Books, Google Books, Kobo Books, Israel 365, or audible.com platform in 190 countries across this roiling, toiling, boiling planet, where you can find any of my 350 book editions, such as IBM and the Holocaust, and my latest, Israel Strikes Iran. You want an autographed copy? Hit edwinblack.com, click books, get access alerts to participate in live future shows at theedwinblackshow.com. You'll see a much enhanced and exquisitely produced version of this show and prior episodes by subscribing to the YouTube channel at The Edwin Black Show and click the notification button like tens of thousands of others have. Follow me at Edwin Black Book on X as well as Facebook. And now for my closing word of wisdom. The tiniest seed can create the largest forest. So every man can see the forest. I'm zooming out from our nation's capital. Bless all of you and pray for all that is unfolding before our very eyes.